I'm just going to be speeding through this, so put your listening ears on, kiddos. Go watch the animatics, go watch the fanfic, or listen to the audiobook, and go check out the Q&A stream I did about the Cursed Town AU. Everything's linked in the description. If something that I have already explicitly answered, explained, or heavily implied has been addressed in any of these, and you ask that question in the comments, I will be replying with the brain emoji. You've been blessed with a gloriously wrinkly pile of mushy nerves, please use it, get some critical thinking going. With that said, here is the Cursed Town AU updated explanation video. Chapter 1. It's 1350. We're in a small town situated in a huge forest that is located in a neutral, nondescript part of the world. Because its location doesn't matter, you're concentrating on the wrong things. There's a plague going around. Hannah and Connor are both sick, and Callahan, Laserbeam, Vicstar, Alyssa are all planning to leave. Callahan is the town's only gravedigger, so he wants to finish up his duties before he leaves. He notices a glowing tombstone that has no business being there, because the man buried is Dream, a man accused of being a witch due to experimenting on the dead, who then died himself in prison due to the plague. Big flash, Callahan is frazzled, a huge armor-clad skeleton appears and turns him into a kelpie. Alyssa, Laserbeam and Vicstar freak out because of the light, but freeze when they see Callahan, and are then turned into ghouls by Skeleton Dream. Connor is then turned into a Bauk, who catches Hannah, who gets turned into a witch. Chapter 2, 1353. Puns is a thief who gets caught by Callahan. Dream doesn't like his whole stealing thing. Puns apologizes, Dream forgives him but doesn't let him leave, turning him into a dragon. Chapter 3, 1360. Puns catches King Errod, letting his 2 soldiers and their horses to escape, which will be explained later, but for now, Dream didn't want them because they suck, and drops Errod from a high altitude, turning him into a Gorgon. Yes, I know, Gorgons don't have snake tails, those would be called Dracaena or other names. Let me have my fun, sheesh. Sam is captain of Errod's guard, so when the soldiers return without their king, he goes to look for Errod with his horse named Fran. Sam gets surrounded by the monsters, but fights back, only to be caught by Dream by the neck and turned into a Dullahan Centaur mix. Chapter 4, 1390. Skeppy is a traveller who gets lost in the forest and is turned to stone by Errod. He does not die! He then gets it turned into a gargoyle by Dream. Chapter 5, 1410. Nikki is a fisher who is struggling with making a living. She stumbles onto a marsh in the forest and gets dragged into the waters by Callahan and turned into a siren. Yes, I know, the original sirens were bird women, but sirens have been depicted as creepy mermaids since the Middle Ages. Let me have my fun. Chapter 6, 1530. Puffy and Foolish are both shepherds. Puffy is Foolish's mentor, and Foolish's family owns a dairy farm not far off. Foolish is currently struggling with a broken gate, so Puffy is out herding the sheep alone. She gets caught in a trance by Nikki singing, dropping her staff in the process. She's brought to the edge of the marsh, is caught by Hannah, and turned into a banshee. Foolish is worried about her not returning, so after being warned by his sibling Moo to not wander into the forest, he finds Puffy's staff there and hears her distressed wailing. He also ends up at the edge of the marsh, where Nikki drags him into the water and he's turned into a sea serpent. Chapter 7, 1600. Bad Boy Halo is from the local town at the edge of the forest, and he saw some of the creatures as a child. Nobody believed him and he started going insane, eventually being labelled as the local bogeyman of the town. He eventually saw Skeppy again and chased after him, only to get lost in the forest. He has a mental breakdown. Dream takes pity on him and turns Bad into a fallen angel. Michael McGill is a journalist who writes about legends and myths, although he doesn't believe in them himself. He hears about the story of Bad and, curious, wanders into the forest. He eventually comes across Bad's tombstone, and just as he's writing about it, gets caught by Bad and is turned into a zombie. Chapter 9, 1705. Simesicle was a traveller who got caught into a trance and was brought into the forest. He got lost and is chased by Michael, the nature around slime trying to stop him. He gets stuck in mud, where Michael is smiling at him while Dream appears, turning Simesicle into a slime monster because I'm creative like that. Chapter 10, 1750. Fundy is a fox hunter who is struggling to live, so he's looking for any forest where he can hunt without landlords scamming him. He gets lost in the forest and stumbles onto the town. He gets knocked down and caught by Skeppy, and is then turned into a Nogitsune, which is a category of Kitsune. Chapter 11, 1820. Ponk and Schlatt are a travelling duo. Ponk is a scientist interested in plants, and Schlatt is an archaeologist with a fascination of death and gold. They found Errod's ruined castle and the remnants of the story of when the king and captain of the guards went missing. Ponk and Schlatt find tombstones, which Schlatt is fascinated by, but Ponk is not. Ponk goes a little deeper into the bushes where he sees someone moving around, and it turns out to be Fundy, in human form. They talk a bit, Fundy eventually turning into his fox form and knocking Ponk out, who gets turned into a Frankenstein's monster mix. Schlatt is a fan of Michael McGill's work, so when he finds his journal, he's very excited, calling out to Ponk. The latter has already been turned, so Schlatt freaks out, seeing Fundy in the back. Michael appears too, and Schlatt is surrounded. He gets turned into his cryo-sphinx. Chapter 12, 1860. H-Bomb is a trapper, and he's putting up traps around the forest, including a bear trap he doesn't like to use. Schlatt appears, and at first H-Bomb thinks he's just a ram, but gets scared when he sees the rest of the cryo-sphinx and gets backed up into his own bear trap, which clamps around his ankle. Schlatt laughs, Dream appearing behind him H-bomb and turning him into a werewolf. Chapter 13, 1900. George is a civil service servant who is sleep deprived. He's tasked with walking to another town, but because he's so exhausted, he gets lost in the forest. He's caught into a trance and brought to the graveyard, where he's snapped out of it, seeing an open coffin or tombstone that has his name on it. Dream shoves him into the coffin and turns George into a vampire. Chapter 14, 1912. Anne Frost, Velvet and Floof live in a town at the edge of the forest, Velvet being a local and Ant having moved there. Floof goes missing, so Ant goes looking for her, only to be duped by George into thinking he's Floof and luring Ant into the forest and catching him. Ant being turned into a catchy. Floof returns to Velvet, and while Velvet never finds Ant, he has a feeling he knows what happened. Chapter 15, 1922. Quackity, Sapnap and Carl Jacobs are an archaeologist trio who were inspired by Schlatt. Due to the 100-year disappearance of him and Punk, they decide to try and resolve it. They also find Eris Rune Castle and the story left there, so decide to go look in the forest. They find Bad's, Michael's and Schlatt's tombstones and start connecting the pieces about the disappearances, only to be attacked by a slime monster. The three run away and climb up a rocky hill, but Slimecicle can't follow them up. The hill cuts off into a cliff that overlooks the marsh. Foolish slams his tail against a cliffside, shattering it and causing the trio to fall, Dream turning them into a chimera just before they hit the ground. Chapter 16, 1940. Phils and Technoblade are World War II soldiers, but get separated from the rest of their troop by the enemy, and run into the forest via the mountains for safety. Once they've lost their pursuers, they decide to desert the army and try to get back to their home country and farm, where Kristen, Phil's wife, is waiting for them. They stumble onto Ant, who they think is a normal cat. He runs away and in hopes of finding people, chase him. They see him floating beside a large gargoyle at the entrance of the town, where Sam is already waiting for them. Phil and Techno both try to escape, but are stopped by Ant and Sam. Phil sees his locket, which has Kristen's photo in it, and holds it tightly before Dream turns him into a Nachkrab, and Techno into a Minotaur. Technically he'd be a Mino Boar or a Mino Capros, because Taur is bull and Capros is wild pig, but Minotaur sounds cooler. Chapter 17, 1950. Rambo is a local who got scratched as a child by Ant when he wandered too closely to the forest. After 3 days he started sleepwalking and getting horrible confusing nightmares where he seemed to wake up from with knowledge nobody else in the town knew, because of everybody's fear of the forest, and a lot of local cases went cold because they were blamed on the forest, even though Rambo knew that wasn't the case. He never told his parents about the scratch or why he started sleepwalking, because he was scared of disappointing them and becoming a bogeyman like Bad had centuries ago. His parents put as many safety measures as they could so Rambo stayed safe, but when he was 19, crawling and sleepwalking became so strong, and Rambo sleepwalked out of his bedroom window, climbing down the climbing vines at the side of their house, and walked into the forest, where he was awoken abruptly by Dream and turned into an Alu. His disappearance was labelled a runaway, and nothing came of it. Chapter 18, 1973. Purpled is an alien conspiracist at the height of his popularity, and heard stories about the forest he thought was aliens. He was warned about the locals not to go, but he went anyway and got lost. He saw Callahan's lantern in the distance, thinking it was alien lights, but got caught by the Sapnap, Carl and Quackity Chimera instead, getting turned into an alien. Chapter 19, 2020. Jack Manifold, CPK and Wilbur are YouTubers who all have their individual careers, but also run a ghost hunting channel together that does very well. Amesy, a fellow YouTuber, told them of the forest and the three decided to go. The locals also warned them, but they went anyway. They find Purple's tombstone and destroyed flashlight and meet George, who they think is normal, maybe slightly creepy guy, until Jack notices George doesn't appear on his camera screen. George tackles Wilbur into the bushes, where Wilbur yells at the others to run away. They do, but Jack is caught by George and dragged into a tree. Wilbur is turned into a ghost and Jack into an animatronic looking cyborg. Fundy is chasing CPK and managed to scratch him, but CPK escapes, passing out just at the edge of the forest. A voice in his head was yelling at him to run. Chapter 20. CPK is having a nightmare, where he's afraid yet entranced of two small green flames telling him to come home, but he's stopped by somebody in chains who is pulling him back. This person is Fundy, but CPK doesn't see him. Amesy wakes CPK up, having come to look for their friends after they went missing for too long. CPK tries to explain what happened, Amesy saying they believe him only because they see a creature CPK identifies as Rambo in the forest. Amesy questions why CPK knew who Fundy is, and CPK gets scared. They both decide to leave and discuss this elsewhere. Chapter 21, 2021. Aaron, Tammy, and Tubbo are outsiders who have come to travel to the town to visit Tina and Boomer for Halloween, who are locals. The latter two warned them to stay away from the forest. Tubbo has been getting a weird feeling since they arrived and saw Callahan's lantern in the forest. Aaron is trying to scare Tommy with information about the haunted forest. Aaron knows about CPK and Amesy's story, but doesn't believe them. The three leave, taking a path that goes around the forest. Tubbo is caught into a trance as Tommy gets dared by Aaron to take a shortcut through the forest to Tina's house. He's only joking and doesn't intend on forcing him, but Tubbo says he'll do it, so Tommy goes with him. Aaron arrives at Tina and Boomer's, where they are horrified to hear what Tubbo and Tommy have done. Chapter 22, Tommy and Tubbo, unlike others, aren't getting chased because they are willingly going into the town escorted by Sam. They're turned into a demon and bee monster. Boomer, Tina and Aaron go looking for them in the forest, knowing it's a bad idea, but hoping that if they go looking for them now, they have a chance to save them. Aaron finds their tombstones and gets bit by Vicstar, who tries to take him away. Tina throws a flashlight at Vic and it hits him, which makes him let go of Aaron. The three start running and are chased by Eric and Sam. Foolish lunges out of the water and grabs Tina. Aaron's way to the water is blocked by Callahan and Nikki. Boomer, who is blocked by Bad and H-Bomb, yells at Aaron to run and get out of here. Aaron does, but Tubbo and Tommy chase after him. Boomer does his best to not get caught, but even after hiding, he's found by Rambo, Purple and Hannah. He hears Tina scream, who has just been turned into a Matago, and he runs to her, but is turned into a Bukabach by Dream, taking notice of the purple book. Chapter 23, Aaron is running away, despite the incredible pain of his shoulder, which he feels itching and clawing at him. Despite the devil and Bee chasing him, he hears Tubbo and Tommy's voices telling him to keep running, as he trips over Tina and Boomer's new tombstones as they scream. He keeps running and arrives at the edge. His wounded shoulder transforms into a paw-like arm and catches on a tree, trying to keep him there. He manages to get free and escapes, seeing Tommy and Tubbo run back into the trees. He calls the emergency number and faints. Chapter 24, at the hospital, nobody believes Aaron, or at least refuse to believe. Aaron starts seeing the monsters in his hospital room, calling him to come back to the forest. He gets painful visions and memories that don't belong to him as he's tormented. He eventually sees Ghost Wilbur and Cyborg Jack, who shows him a vision of CPK, who seems to notice and see Aaron, and Amesy. Filza also shows him a vision of Kristen. Everything changes and Dream starts calling for Aaron directly. Sam, as a trapped soul, reassures Aaron and directs him out of his mind's forest. Green Mist chases after him, but he's encouraged by Tubbo and Tommy to keep going. He wakes up, this was all a nightmare. He looks into his reflection and his monster form grins back at him. The monster is Bua. Chapter 25, Aaron is writing down everything he's learning about the monsters, mostly controlled by his infected arm. While awake, he sees visions, the trapped souls explaining to him that what they know and what happened. It's revealed that the ghosts are caught in a miserable limbo where they can't even talk or comfort each other, this being the first time they've really been able to communicate with anyone. All the souls that have been caught for more than 3 years have chains around their wrist and throat, black eyes that drip with black tears. Wilbur and Jack have black eyes with no tears and chains only around their wrists. Tubbo, Tommy, Boomer and Tina have white eyes and chains around their wrists. They all warn him he needs to leave for his safety, since this is his 3rd day after being wounded, and explaining the book is the source of Dream's power. They all express that Dream doesn't know they exist, and they're afraid of something that isn't Dream. He wakes up and tells the doctors he needs to leave. They say his family is coming to get him tomorrow and to wait. He yells at them that he can't, but they don't listen to him and leave. He breaks down, thinking this is it, but CPK arrives and introduces himself. Chapter 26. This goes over what CPK and Amesy have been doing the last year. They tried different ways to get awareness about the forest and their friends' disappearances, but they were shunned by everybody, including their friends, families, and online followers. CPK starts to sleepwalk and injure himself in his sleep, Amesy doing all they can to stop him. They start using CPK's dreams as a way to get hints to what they should do. Only Fundy and Phil are able to break through to CPK, but they can't talk, only show him things. Through Phil's locket and dog tags, they figure out his name, the year he disappeared, and that they needed to look for a woman. They travel to his home farm based on the info Amesy found online and ask a man, who are later referenced as to being this AU's zombie piglin Michael, but he's just a guy, about a woman related to Filza. They're introduced to Kristen, who is 100 years old at this point, but still stubbornly going. They tell her their story, which she questions at first, but eventually believes after CPK talks about her locket, which Filza also has. CPK and Amesy stay at the farm and help Kristen, who helps CPK with his nightmares. He eventually dreams of Aaron's own attack, and tells the others they need to return to the town at the edge of the forest. They go by car, taking a jerry can of fuel and a sledgehammer. They all meet at Aaron at the hospital, where he shows them his drawings. CPK says he has a plan to how they can save the trapped souls. Chapter 27. They not so legally sneak Aaron out of the hospital and are at the edge of the forest. CPK has the jerry can of fuel and Amesy has the sledgehammer. Aaron is instructed to be the bait and distract the monsters while CPK and Amesy cause chaos. Kristen will be following Aaron. As soon as he steps into the forest, he's brought into a slight trance, and Dream welcomes him in. Because Dream has all his attention on Aaron, none of the monsters realize the others are in the town. Just before Dream can turn Aaron into the Bua, CPK sets part of the town on fire, and Amesy destroys Rambo's tombstone. CPK can feel a whisper that isn't Dream or monsters nagging him, but he ignores it. Rambo, Tina, and Tubbo go after Amesy, where the tombstone they just destroyed has fixed itself. The fire isn't doing anything to the town or forest, and it dies down, Boomer, Fundy, and Michael McChill catching CPK. Eren tries to steal the book from Dream, but he backhands Eren, who is caught by Techno. AMZ is running away from Rambo, Tino and Tubbo, and Phil swoops down to catch them. He stops abruptly as Kristen steps forward to protect AMZ, and the crow breaks down crying. All the monsters freeze, staring at this. Dream is confused and realizes his skeleton form is shifting back to his human appearance. He panics and orders the monsters to bring the human to him. Techno gets angry and for a moment shifts to his trapped soul's appearance, showing the curse is weakening, and shifts back into the Minotaur looking to attack Dream. Dream traps all the monsters in green chains, including Eren and CPK's arms. Schlatt is able to escape by flying faster than the chains. Foolish is the biggest and strongest, so fights back, which takes all of Dream's attention. Sam is able to catch his hand but holding the book with his whip, and Tommy attacks Dream, confusing him as he grabs the book and throws it to Schlatt, who flies over all of them and drops the book onto Sapnap, who uses his fire-breathing ability to destroy the book. Chapter 28, 1350, Dream's backstory. His cat Patches died because of the plague, and having nothing else to do, tried to find a cure for it. He dug up the dead, and Dream caught the plague himself. The locals accused him of being a witch, and he was thrown into prison, where he died of the plague. Patches tried to meet him in death, but he was dragged into the dark by XD, who gave a piece of his power in the form of the purple book, claiming to give Dream a second chance at a happy life by making his own family. Dream just had to promise to keep them there. Dream promises he only wants high-quality people in his family, with certain attributes he was never granted when alive. Dream thinks he's doing a good thing. Chapter 29, Wilbur, Jack, Tina, Boomer, Tommy and Tubbo have all been given their normal bodies back, the other trapped souls becoming free. Where tombstones used to be, the ghost dead's bodies have appeared, the reasons being that after 3 years of being trapped, their souls and bodies were completely separated. The ghosts all started moving on to the afterlife, except for Phil's and Techno, who are talking to Kristen and Frost, who is scared that Velvet won't be in the afterlife, and Sam, Ponk, Alyssa, Callahan, Sapnap, Bad and George, who want to bring Dream with them, but he's stuck in chains. He's sobbing and generally apologetic, not realizing what he was doing. They all understand and forgive him. XZ makes himself known, tells them that Dream can't leave. XZ was using the souls as cattle, feeding off of their misery and negativity to be stronger, so when Dream failed to keep them here, XZ planned on feeding off of him alone. At this point, Velvet and Floof come to bring Anne to the afterlife, assuring him Dream will be fine. Patches arrives, knowing XD has no power over her and that Dream can absolutely break free from XD's grasp if he just trusts her and forgives himself. She pounces forward, Dream wanting to catch and protect her, so in his movement and defiance of XD, he breaks the chains restraining him. This makes XD lose the only connection he had to the physical world, and he disappears. The remaining ghosts welcome Dream, and they all go into the afterlife together. Techno tells Filza it's their time to go, and also leaves. Filza reassures Kristen they'll see each other soon, and also leaves. Eren asks what they're going to tell the police. Chapter 30, the survivors all leave the forest, where Tommy's mother is yelling up a storm at the authorities. They're all given medical treatment. Wilbur is struggling with feeling real again, not having had a physical body for a year, but Kristen and the others are there to support him. Over the next few months, the survivors officially identify as many of the dead bodies as possible, returning them to whatever living relatives they have or to their hometowns. A brand new graveyard was made in the forest, where those who couldn't be returned to their hometowns were laid to rest until they were officially identified. They managed to get Eret's castle and the forest to be protected historical sites, and also build the museum all about the forest and the town. Cases that had gone cold were reopened and being solved now that the locals stopped being afraid and knew which cases were forest related or not. AMZ found out about myths and legends of XD, and the survivors decide that if they find any leads about where XZ is, they'll follow them and try to free any other souls they can. They've also all been getting therapy and slowly recovering from their experiences. Kristen has become incredibly frail at this point, and she knows she won't be around for much longer. She gives the others Phil and Techno's dog tags, as well as her own locket with a photo of them three when they were young. Chapter 31. Kristen has died and is laid to rest at the farm besides Phil and Techno. While the survivors are mourning, Kristen awakens as a ghost and is welcomed by Phil and Techno. At this point, I reference that all the farmer employees are human versions of Dream SMP characters, not members, such as Michael, Michelle, Yogurt, Shroud, and any other you can think of, except for Foolish Jr. and Finley, to be explained later. Kristen wishes she could tell the survivors she's doing fine, and that's when Filza, Techno, and Kristen realize Tommy and Wilbur are looking at them. The boys are holding Kristen's gift. The ghost trio wave at them, and the boys wave back, all smiling. For now, things are okay. How did I come up with the story and designs? Honestly, I worked around my existing designs. I never intended to make this series, but people kept asking for lore and further explanation about the This Is Halloween animatic, but I decided to give myself a year to come up with a story and make it into a Halloween series. The way I went about it is that I figured out what I wanted for the story. I wanted to give all the trapped souls a backstory and then continue the story with Boomer, Tina, and Aaron. I did that by listening to songs I thought could help with inspiring me, and basically hardcore dreaming until I came up with a workable story. I struggled a bit because I knew I wanted Aaron to escape into the free creatures, but didn't know how to go about that because Aaron doing it alone seemed a bit impossible. But thankfully, CPK and Amesy joined the SMP at this point, so I was able to find a way to add them to the story. I did have a couple rewrites of what characters I would use, but honestly everything just fell right into place when it came to the story. I've always loved Nivira and FNAF songs, I was familiar with them already and was so pleased when I could tell the story I wanted to using those songs. A lot of things just coincidentally worked and made sense, such as the line, 6 innocent little souls and bringing us home. That wasn't at all intentional, as I had already planned on having Callahan, Alyssa, Vicstar, Laserbeam, Connor, and Hannah be the OG trapped souls, so it just coincidentally worked out perfectly. Now, I will go through each of the characters and explain why I gave them their story and monster designs. With all these, I worked their story around the designs I already had, so when I say story-wise, it means I decided on this after the This Is Halloween video came out, and to make it make sense with the design I initially gave them. Hope that clears things up. I will also be reusing some still relevant clips from the old explanation video. In my old explanation video, I called him a skeleton necromancer, but as I went on with the story, I realized the whole necromancer thing wasn't fitting the story, especially as none of the souls died until the curse was lifted. So he's just a regular skeleton that has a magical book that can trap souls. No, he's not a lich. I vehemently object to him being called that. He's a skeleton. Reason why I chose a skeleton is because they already have a permanent smile. I gave him a floating head as a reference to the various floating bull head designs people have for him, and I give him a creeping looking armor to reference his nightmare armor. Story-wise, he's a skeleton because he's the only trapped soul to have actually died, and he dealt with death a lot in his life. The chains around his wrists are to reference he was and still is a prisoner. Initially I was going to make him evil, but I felt it would be nicer to the story if he was just another tormented soul like the others and give him a happy ending.
This was actually an idea from a Discord peep. I think it was Hufflepuff Bean. A lot of people thought Wendigo because of the deer look, but I just don't want to draw Wendigos. Not because I don't think they're super cool, they are, but just, I don't know, people are weird about people drawing Wendigos, and I don't want any unnecessary arguments in the comments. So I went with Kelpies instead. They're a shape-shifting creature from Scotland, usually described as a black horse-like creature that can also turn human. Some stories say that they keep the horse hooves when human, hence Callahan's design. One of the most common stories was that if you sat on the horse or touched it, you would get stuck to it and it dragged you into the depths of the water. I decided to theme my Callahan Kelpie design by making it an angler-themed Kelpie, because water and fish and luring people into danger, and just let me have this, okay? I think it's a cool idea. Also, I added the red A on his forehead as a reference to the Captain America on his Minecraft design. That's all it is.
Story-wise, I like the idea of him being the first court due to Callahan being the Dream SMP admin guy, as well as being a gravedigger since he's cleaning up, in a sense, and putting order about. The three of them were ghouls because they worked court together. I decided ghouls because they are also connected to death and graveyards. Also because they're connected to eating flesh, so it makes sense for Vicstar to bite Aaron. It also fit in quite well with Laser and Vic's Dream SMP lore and how they were used by Dream and Puns for experimentation on the revival book. I decided this trio to be OG Trapped Souls because Alice and Callahan were two of the original Dream SMP members, and because I kind of think of Alyssa, Laser, and Vic as the unactive trio.
Bauks are really interesting, and I had to do a lot of research to find a creature that fit Connor. Bauks are Serbian creatures but are said to hide in dark places, holes, or abandoned houses. How many times has he moved into Tommy's home, wanting to grab, carry away, and devour its victim, eating pants? It's also the closest creature I could find that looked like a hedgehog, and I added some blue to try and help with identifying him.
There's no reason for him to be an OG Trapped Soul other than he could play into the hides in abandoned houses part of a Bauk, and also because I needed more Forest Town locals.
Roses, lots of baking, and the whole egg thing. I don't know, it gave me witchy vibes of potion and plants. And the cake made me think of the witch from Hansel and Gretel. Originally, all the flowers were going to be wilted roses, but then somebody on my Discord suggested a plant from Little Shop of Horrors, and it looked like a Venus flytrap, so I replaced all the roses except for one on the dress with them. Also, I wanted to give her an infected look with the vines crawling all over her, like the egg. I really like her dress as well.
There's no reason for her to be an OG Trapped Soul either, I just wanted her to have an understandable and easy reason to already be in the forest. Would also help Connor play into the hides in dark places of being a Bauk.
Man lives in a tower, likes gold and is super fierce. Gold hoarding dragon that guards dream cemetery just makes sense. Funky little detail. I placed Punz's medal where the heart would be on a dragon, in the throat, which I based off the Beowulf story where he slays the dragon. A lot of people got really confused about who the dragon was meant to be, which just shows me how unappreciated Punz is, because honestly I thought it was pretty obvious. Shiny dragon go brrr.
I get that I could have incorporated more white into his design, but I wanted to draw a full golden dragon like Eugene from the Chronicles of Narnia, and nobody can stop me. Story-wise, Punz being a thief looking for gold played into the gold-hoarding dragon theme, but he also plays into the dragon symbolism of greed, just like Eugene from Narnia.
I got a lot of questions for why I chose a Gorgon for Eret, and honestly, I chose it mainly for the aesthetic. Eret is fabulous after all, and I think Gorgons are fabulous. Also because it gives a quirky reason for the glasses, you know, with the whole turning people into stone thing, but also I was very loosely inspired by the worst of Dream SMP Eret's story of being a snake, betrayal, who fell from grace / was dethroned, vaguely like Medusa's story. And also because Eret is sassy, and I find Gorgon sassy.
Eret being a king, of course, is based on their Dream SMP lore. I wrote it in the text in the old video, but Eret's snake's eyes each represent a colour of the rainbow. Punz being the one to kidnap him was a play on the old Middle Ages dragon stories and damsel in distress needing to be saved by a knight stories.
Centaur is pretty obvious. A lot of people draw Sam as a centaur because creepers have 4 legs. But why a Dullahan? Because Dullahan have whips made out of spines, and that is badass. Dullahans are headless riders from Irish folklore that ride a black horse. It was believed that if a Dullahan stops riding, a person is due to die. If a Dullahan calls out a person's name, they're drawing away the soul of their victim, at which point the person immediately drops dead. Which is why Sam's the one to approach Tommy and Tubbo in the animatic, because as soon as he had called out to them and stopped working, it was already too late for them to get away. They were trapped. And also because it looks cool.
The Dullahan stopping to walk thing also applies to when Techno and Phil got caught. Once Sam stopped walking, it was too late for them. Sam being captain of the guard is loosely based on his warden lore, being responsible, having an authoritative title and all that. Sam being the only one to actually fight back out of all the characters is actually important and plays back in the final fight scene, when Dream recognizes a quality about him that he likes. When Sam gets transformed, Dream grabs him by the throat and ends up being a Dullahan, which I've just found a cool reference. And yes, Fran and Sam got merged into one being, which is why Sam's monsters is a combination, because it's 2 souls in one. In the story, after Sam and Eret disappeared, it's explained that Eret's kingdom crumbled apart and was invaded by another kingdom.
Gargoyles are made of stone, diamonds are precious stones. See the connection? Anybody? Also, gargoyles were often used on churches and castles to ward off evil spirits and create a safe environment for the inhabitants, and they don't move unless there's somebody to scare away. Skeppy often wanted to stay with the egg on the Dream SMP, so I just made the connection there. His eyes only glow when he's mobile, otherwise he's just a statue made out of stone and diamond.
Eret being the one to turn Skeppy into stone felt like a cool reason as to why Skeppy was turned into a gargoyle. I decided on Skeppy being a traveller looking for odd jobs because I couldn't think of a set profession for him to have that would be a good enough reason for him to get lost in the forest. Plus, it was pretty common at the time to travel about. It would make you an outcast, hence why Skeppy going missing wouldn't be noticed.
Yes, I know, sirens were bird women in Greek mythology. I based them off the modern take of sirens, as well as a Sinbad animated movie. Directly inspired by Nikki in Origins SMP, although my actual design for that is a bit different. I gave her freaky gills because I think it looks cool.
Nikki being a fisherwoman and how she was caught by being dragged underwater by Callahan is based on her being a siren creature and all fish looking. Callahan caught her because kelpies are water monsters.
Banshees are very heartbreaking spirits. They're from Irish folklore, and there's a few different depictions of them. The one I went with is that of a ghastly woman wearing all white with bloodshot eyes from crying. Typically, banshees are harmless, but hearing their cries, wails, and mournings would mean somebody was about to die, usually a former family member of the banshee. There's a few different stories, but that's the version I picked for Puffy. I honestly was mainly inspired because of the hair. No, really. Big white fluffy hair is great for spirits. And also because, you know, Foolish, her adopted son, was executed right in front of her. I think that would make anybody cry in a wail, but it's mainly because of the hair. Some people thought I should have made him into a golem because his Minecraft skin is a totem of death. Honestly, I was leaning more into the shark aspect of Foolish's brand rather than his Dream SMP character. I just used the colors. Sea serpents are freaking huge, so I thought that would also fit since his character is supposedly 23'3".
Them being shepherds is based on Puffy's Dream SMP character originally having sheep features. I think that's been retconned since, but though I am not sure. I did the same thing with Foolish as I did with Nikki, where the method he was caught was influenced by his monster. Being a newish monster, Puffy would have had a little consciousness left, so seeing Foolish would have been heartbreaking to her, and since he was about to get caught, she wailed. I didn't go with the mother-son dynamic for this AU because I wanted to make it more heartbreaking and reference his IRL family. Moo is Foolish's sister and is the reason why I decided that Foolish's family would own a dairy farm, because cows. In the modern day, Foolish's living family descendants would be human versions of Foolish Jr. and Finley, though they would be some distant nephew and niece, not his kids. I also decided for Foolish to be one of the main monsters to fight back during the change scenes, because in the Dream SMP lore, he's a main threat to Dream because he's the strongest and most powerful. I decided to play into that for that AU.
For everybody who said I couldn't make a design of Bad because he's already a monster, yes I can. I do what I want. Halo means angel, Bad Boy means bad angel, so fallen angel, yeah. Shattered halo, shredded wings, and a glowing chest cavity. Nah, it fits. In the story, Bad was never an angel, that's the monster he turned into, so yeah.
Story-wise, the fallen angel bit is a reference to Bad's loss of innocence once he saw the creatures as a child. He was completely right and innocent, but the town rejected him anyways, so in a sense rejecting a messenger, angelos means messenger, of the truth. So Dream turned him from a metaphorical angel, pure, to a fallen angel, tainted, cursed. Him having a gaping hole in his chest exposing his quote-unquote soul would be a reference to his soul being messed with before and after he was trapped.
There's this one song called The Zombie Song by Stephanie Maybe that goes, oh, if I were a zombie, I'd never eat your brain. I just want your heart. Yeah, I just want your heart. I just want your heart, because I'd want you. Before Michael changed up his character to no longer be a dream simp, that's the impression I got, since his character was dream obsessed. Also because zombie go brrr and I thought I could do something cool with him. Look, he has a worm buddy, and spiders.
There isn't really a story reason as to why he's a zombie, however, I think it makes for an efficient scare for those he catches, such as Slimecicle, who at first thought he was getting help because Michael looks human, but when he started running away, the realization that no matter how fast he ran and no matter how slowly Michael walked, Michael would still catch him is a pretty scary thought. And also because Schlatt, being an archaeologist, loves looking into dead and old stories, which is relevant to Michael's monster and also his profession.
What else did you expect? Acidic slime monster.
The bones in the goop are his bones, they're from his own human body. So my old self lied. Charlie getting stuck in the mud is a hint at what he would become, slimy and gross. In the story, Slimecicle is a traveler to represent his Dream SMP character who is kind of everywhere throughout the story. He was walking in the mountains beside the forest and got caught in a trance by it, because of reasons I will explain later, and got lost.
Yeah, I could have gone with a traditional kitsune, but I think no kitsune fits so much better. No kitsune are a type of kitsune, not considered holy like other kitsunes are, and are seen as low ranking and tend to be malicious, unlike the others who tend to be good and wise. They prefer to look like normal foxes, but shape-shift into humans to trick people. Their stories often end in tragedy, and no kitsune are very unreliable. They also like to steal various things, including candles, which is what Fundy is holding. Trickster Fox. Yes.
In the story, Fundy is a lowly and poor huntsman who specifically hunts foxes, which I based on his whole fox design. Sort of you become what you eat kill thing. And also because hunters are often in forests and stuff, so it would make sense for Fundy to be in a forest.
I have 3 reasons for this one. 1. Frankenstein's monster is a tragic character who just wanted to find someone to love, and Dream SMP Punk has had his heart broken many a times. 2. Dream SMP Punk is a doctor, so I added the Frankenstein aspect to his design. And 3. Sam decided to make a puzzle out of his arm, and he supposedly had his legs blown off by Techno's fireworks at the Manberg Festival. So I got the idea of him being all stitched up to fix him. Sam actually has nothing to do with Punk looking this way, it's just what he turned into.
I forgot to mention this, but the 3 scratches are based off Sam killing him with a trident in the lore, though I guess in the AU it would be from Fundy attacking him. I chose the year 1820 for Punk and Schlatt because it was 4 years after Frankenstein was written, so XD would know what Frankenstein is and influence Dream to turn him into that because it fits Punk. I decided to make Punk a scientist in this AU because it fit the Frankenstein theme. It would give him a reason to want to travel with Schlatt, and it's based on his Dream SMP lore.
He's a ram, not a goat, guys, please. Cryosinks have the body of a lion and the head of a ram. In Egyptian mythology, they represent power. They love wealth and treasures, travel to look for them, as well as gynosphinxes, and often became single fathers because the mother, gynosphinxes, would abandon them. Likes monies and power, traveled from out of nowhere, and there's a popular alternate universe where Tubbo is Schlatt's son. It fits. Also, he's a ram.
The description of the cryosphinx and the personalities made me think Schlatt being an archaeologist would be appropriate. Also because in the Dream SMP lore, he has a lot of interest and knowledge on death and such. The reason why Schlatt and Punk are a duo is because Punk was Schlatt's doctor in the Dream SMP lore.
Oh no, I made the cat maid guy not a cat. The tragedy. Okay, but look at his MC skin and look at H-Bomb. He just seems like the type of guy who's secretly a werewolf. I still have him in the anime schoolgirl outfit, like his cursed cat maid outfit. It's okay. And no, his nails aren't painted, it's just the shine. Also, H-Bomb has very blue eyes, and I remember somebody telling me that in some countries it's believed that people with very blue eyes and slightly sharp canines were humans that were werewolves, and I think that fits H-Bomb really well because he's got very blue eyes. Also, I wanted to draw a werewolf. Can you blame me? That's super cool. I decided to make him a trapper because I didn't want to use a huntsman again, and being a trapper would mean I can make him use a bear trap, which would do for a gory scene. I also decided on a trapper because the outfit they often use in the 1860s had the whole shirt and bow thing going on, so his werewolf clothing matches his profession. I decided for H-Bomb to get trapped because H-Bomb often creates games for his friends and videos and such, where they often get trapped or tricked, so H-Bomb getting that made sense to me. Bad sleep schedule, looks good with hair pushed back, and is our favorite white boy that barely ever sees the sun. England is super great. What else do you need? Some people asked if he's still colorblind and if that means he can't see the color red, and my answer to that is... He's a vampire. I don't know what their vision is like. You know what? He sees in black and white. He doesn't get any joy. I made his glasses more Victorian-y looking. When he's not in the darkness, he looks relatively normal with a case of pink eye. But then when he's full vampire, it's fangs and bloody eyes galore. To answer the what if question of if you had a disability and were turned into a monster, would you still have the disability or would it reflect on the monster? The answer would be the latter. Like with George, the monster would have an aspect of it that would reflect the disability. I made George a civil service servant because it's a profession that exists that I haven't used before in the story and would give me a reason to send him out and get lost. I also chose George to be the one to catch Ant Frost because traditional vampires could turn into various animals, so George could shift his appearance to trick Ant into thinking he was Floof. No, it's not a Star Wars thing. A cat Sith is a creature from Celtic mythology. They're usually black cats with a white spot on their chest and can be the size of dogs. It was also believed that on Samhain, sorry if I said that wrong, which is a Celtic festival, that they would bless any house that left a source of milk out for them to drink. But that if a family didn't put any milk out, the family's cows would not produce any milk. Some folktales also describe them as witches that had 9 lives and could turn into cats. Antfrost is a cat, what more can I say? I did add the CME's face markings to make it more Antfrosty, as well as the legs be a bit more brown to match the original Minecraft skin. In the story, I decided to include Velvet and Floof because I felt that would add an emotional layer to the story. I didn't want to directly involve too many of the non-Dream SMP members in the story, however there was a theory going about that Dream SMP and Frost wanted the egg to bring him Velvet, so I decided to include him. And I included Floof because it should be a good reason for Frost to go looking in the forest and also himself get turned into a cat creature. I got some question about why Floof went missing or how she got dirty. I left it unanswered on purpose. Did she get lost like cats sometimes do, or did Exian Dream influence the nature around her to make her lost as to lure Ant Frost in? Who knows? I honestly just really wanted to draw a chimera, and these 3 just fit. For reference, I'm talking about the Greek mythology chimera, not any other types you may find. Sapnap's logo is fire, and a clip of him roaring at George during a manhunt maybe give him the fire and lion body. Rah. And also because, this clip.
I know damn well you're not talking to me, Carl.
I gave Quackity the snake tail part because his Dream SMP character tends to be slippery and a snake. Also, those are just his face markings, by the way, not scars. And yes, low hanging fruit because he's the butt of every joke. Ha 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 ha, y'all ain't funny. And Carl, I don't know, he just kind of fit. Quackity and Sapnap fit well as a lion and snake, and they tend to be a trio with Carl. So he became the goat part. I gave him some funky horns, spiral in the eyes to represent confusion and memory loss and for the aesthetic, and he made his hair super extra fluffy for a more wild look. Small detail, they all have different muzzles based off their animal. I guess the memory loss thing is a bit on the nose with how none of the monsters have the Trap Soul's memories. I decided to make this trio from the 1920s for the Roaring Twenties aesthetic and also for the whole archaeologist movie trend from around that time. Also, having them be 100 years after Schlatt and Punk, who were they inspired by, would give them a good reason to go do their job. I chose Simon Foolish to be the ones to catch them because they have Dream SMP lore connections with Quackity. I also got asked if they're fiancés in this AU. I wrote them to be friends and work partners. Maybe if they had more time alive, they eventually would have become fiancés, but as things are, no. I was so happy when I found this monster. Nachtkrab, a night raven in English, is a type of bogeyman from Eastern Europe. It used to scare children into going to bed, or they'd get hunted and devoured by the raven. You also have an angry raven and a good raven, where one just screams at you and the other one sings you to sleep. But I went with the most common take on the monster. So yeah, big raven monster for Filza. So, you know Technoblade's whole Theseus spiel? Yeah, Theseus and the Minotaur? Okay, anyway, big murderous monster shunned by the world. It just fits. Also, I based the design off of the Babirusa. It was the closest pig I could find that had horns like a bull, and I think it makes for a really disturbing design.
The reason I made them World War II soldiers was for story convenience. Since they have dog tags, there would be a good visual way for them to interact with CPK and Aaron without needing to talk, and also because Kristen would have a chance at still being alive by the 2020s, and also because multiple countries were involved in World War II, so they could come from any country and it would make sense for them to get lost in an unknown terrain, as well as be lost in the sea of missing soldiers, which is unfortunately very much a reality. It makes for a good tragic story that, when given a good ending, is an emotional closure, I think. Out of all the souls, Phil being the one that was the most active to get help is because he wanted to go home, even when he was alive, because he loved and missed Kristen so much. Which is why when he saw her again and broke down during the fight scene, his emotions broke through the curse and affected all of the monsters, which weakening Dream's control. Techno was the first to fight back when the curse weakened because of his Dream SMP lore when it comes to defying authority, unwillingness to being controlled, and his rivalry with Dream.
This one had a lot of people confused. Alu are demons from Akkadian and Sumerian mythology. They were described as having no mouth, lips, noses, or ears, aka no features, like Rambo. They would also stalk a person wandering outside late at night and cause sleep paralysis by covering them like a cloak. Possession by Alus were thought to be the cause of comas. This gave me Ender Walking vibes, so I think it fits. Also, small detail, in the animatic, you'll see that Rambo is always staring right at Tubbo and Tommy. That's because they are his natural victim, humans, and he's stalking them like an Alu would.
I really leaned into the whole Ender Walking, sleepwalking aspect of Rambo, and also made it part of the curse, because if Dream is the main guy controlling all of this, the curse would affect everybody in a similar way. I made him a local who had a very similar experience to Bad Boy Halo, seeing the creatures, with the added detail of being Scratch, which is a setup for CPK and Aaron stories. Also, having the past story of Bad would make Rambo fearful that he would become like that too, so I thought it would fit to show how past stories affect the modern locals.
He made a UFO on the Dream SMP, that's my only excuse. My design for him is already an alien, I just made him more spooky and was inspired by xenomorphs. He has a pew pew gun and wears a hoodie because he's going to kill in comfort. I think he'd be able to win a lot of challenges like this.
He no longer has a pew pew gun, mainly because I didn't want to draw it, but also it didn't fit the vibe. It didn't pass the vibe check. I made him an alien conspiracist to fit with his alien theme, also because it would give him the recklessness to go into the forest. I made him get captured by the Chimera, specifically Quackity, because of their Dream SMP lore, and also because I wanted to put the Chimera into action and write about them more.
Again, need I say more? Ignoring Ghostbur for a moment, I don't know, a ghost just fits Wilbur. Also because these pictures exist. Don't come at me, it just fits, okay? I really let out my inner 14-year-old FNAF fangirl for this one. No, he's not an animatronic, he is a cyborg. Some of that blood is his, and his legs are intact. Mostly. I based the stomach-mouth design on A Nightmare Freddy because I think it looks cool, and also took inspiration from Mangle's wires and stuff. He's rusting a bit, but he'll be fine.
I like Jack's vlog, so I decided that him, Will, and CPK should have a collab channel together, since they're all YouTubers anyway, and make them ghost hunters so that those ghost hunting photos of Wilbur would fit into the AU. Jack is the cameraman, so he kind of gets combined with his camera when he becomes trapped, and Wilbur is a ghost because ghost hunting, and also because, as George said, we don't have a ghost yet, so Wilbur filled in the role, and also does for some good angst later. Woo, angst.
Tommy as a demon is pretty straightforward. Tommy can be a little demon boy sometimes, and I say that affectionately. I went with the mainstream take on demons, red skin, wings, horn, forked tongue, tail, and hooves. Pretty straightforward. Tubbo likes bees. Again, pretty straightforward. I originally thought of making him into a fawn, but I didn't find that very interesting, and that's basically what he is in the Dream SMP, or that's how a lot of people draw him. But then my friend Fraubles, go check her out, suggested I make him look like a bee version of The Fly, which is from the movie The Fly. I liked that a lot, so I did just that.
In this AU, they're not YouTubers, they're just kids mucking about. I decided to have Tubbo be affected by the forest so quickly and instantaneously because in the Dream SMP lore, Tubbo is easily manipulated and influenced. I also played into the clingy duo dynamic by having Toby not want to leave Tubbo alone, and also played into his fear of horror and stuff. The reason why they're not attacked like as many of the other characters is because they willingly gave themselves into the monsters like George and Rambo. They were already in a trance by the time they saw Sam, who stopped walking, as you may remember. This is where I have to start explaining the new characters. Matago are spirits from oral traditions in southern France and can take the form of several animals. However, I went with the cat one for Tina because Tina kitten, and also her Minecraft skin which can have cat ears. Matago are evil, but can be helpful if you feed them well, as they will repay you with wealth. In some traditions, you must not keep the Matago for your whole life, because if you're the owner and are dying, you will suffer a long agony and won't be freed until you free the Matago. It felt like that reflected the fate of the souls very well, although it is reversed. Boomer got turned into a Bukavach. It has various designs, but it was sometimes imagined as a six-legged monster with gnarled horns and bright blue eyes. It lives in lakes and pools, coming out of the water during the night to make a loud noise and would jump onto other living creatures and strangle them. I wanted to give Boomer a frog-type monster without making him look too goofy, so I thought this was a good fit. Boomer also has a fantastic set of lungs and screams very loudly, so his creature literally being named after noise is a great fit. He also jumps on people during bed wars. In this AU, neither Tina nor Boomer are streamers, but are locals of the town. They weren't affected until they went into the forest to look for their friends, knowing that the authorities wouldn't do anything to help. Like with Tommy and Tubbo, Eren isn't a streamer but just a kid who wanted to tease his friends, just a bit of banter. His creature is a demon Bua because I wanted some sort of demonic creature with the arm being an important detail. The Bua looks hella goofy, but I felt I could work with it. In the Dream SMP lore, Eren has a demon arm because he is half demon and also is able to sense the history of locations, I think, and has very intense dreams. That's why I felt it would be a good fit for his survivor role and the events that happened to him in the AU. Also, like with Tommy and Tubbo's Halloween outfits becoming their monsters' appearances, Eren's Halloween hoodie had a red splatter design because I'm really subtle with my foreshadowing like that. These were completely red herrings. These three were never going to be turned into monsters, but I felt like giving my viewers a full sense of panic, and also because I know somebody here would have asked what monster they would have turned into, so I made these ahead of time. CPK's monster isn't a traditional monster, but it is a star constellation. It is the Vulpecula, little fox, and unlike a lot of constellations, it doesn't actually have a myth attached to it. I decided to pick this one, however, because my CPK design has a lot of freckles, so I feel it would be very cute to give the fox a lot of stars as freckles. Also because the Vulpecula is a constellation in the northern sky, and the North Star is a good guidance in nighttime, and in the story, CPK is a guiding star as one of the main characters to actually make a move on saving the people in the forest. Aimsy is an Almiraj. I mainly chose this one based on the design because I wanted to give Aimsy a rabbit creature. Also because I haven't explored medieval Arabic literature much and was really fascinated by the story. The most common version of this creature I could find is of the legend of Iskandar, Alexander the Great, who after defeating a dragon of Dragon Island in the Indian Ocean obtained the Almiraj as a gift. It is said that it causes all other animals that look at it to run away. It is a yellow-coloured beast that resembles a rabbit with a black horn. I made Kristen's creature a seraph because it would contrast XD, who is a demonic spirit. Seraphs are the highest rank in angel hierarchy in Christian theology, having 6 wings that fly around the throne of God singing. 2 wings to cover their faces, 2 to cover their feet, and 2 to fly. I took inspiration of those crying angel statues that you often see in graveyards. I chose this one because Kristen in Dream SMP lore is often thought as death, and in the AU she's quite a tragic character. So I thought a seraph would be great because I can make the visuals quite sad, and also because she's hidden away from the rest of the world because she's been rejected for so long. There's a whole bunch of other reasons I could say for why she's a seraph, but these are a few. Before you start asking about other content creators and what their monsters would be, the answer is I haven't thought of it and never will because that's not relevant to the story. Other characters mentioned in the story that are references are Michael, as in the zombie penguin, Michelle, Yogurt and Shroud, who are all modern employees of Kristen's farm. They're just humans with no relations to the other characters, but it is a reference to the other Dream SMP characters and an easy way for me to explain where the unmentioned characters are. If there's an NPC or pet I haven't mentioned, they live or work on Kristen's farm. A lot of the time when it came to which era which character came from, it was just out of convenience and for the sake of variety. I didn't want to have too many characters from the same time as I wanted to have more fun and freedom with the outfits and stories I could tell. A lot of the character dynamics I implanted in the story are intentional and based on either Dream SMP lore or their IRL dynamics. XZ is a demonic creature that has been around for millennia. As discovered by Amesy in chapter 30, he's been doing this whole cursed locations thing for much longer than any of them have been alive. Dream and the whole forest thing isn't his first or last rodeo with tormenting humans. Being a demonic spirit, all it wants is to torture human souls, both because he hates them and also because he feeds off of their negativity and misery. If XZ completely drains a soul, the soul will completely cease to exist. No afterlife or anything, they will just be erased. That's why some of the soul's eyes turn black over time, and why Jack and Wilbur were so exhausted and worn out when the curse was lifted. Dream's town was a good source of energy because he had such a grasp on Dream's fragile state, so he was genuinely angry at the defiance of the humans. XZ, being a creature who never lived in the real world, unlike humans and animals, does not have a connection to it and cannot physically do things. That's why he needs to make deals with souls like Dreams, as to have somebody else to do his dirty work for him and also to work through. The purple book is a physical manifestation of part of his powers, so having Dream wield it gave him an opening to the physical world. This meant the book plays like a spiderweb. It is at its strongest at the center when Dream is wielding it, and its influence spreads throughout the forest like a spiderweb. None of the creatures can leave beyond the barriers of the spiderweb, hence why they never left the forest due to the limitations of the book's powers. However, certain human individuals, even if they don't step into the spider's web, can still be lured into a trance and influenced depending on their personality and current state. Being injured by one of the turned creatures creates an extension of that web to that singular person. The further you travel from the forest, the less of the control, but you still have horrendous nightmares and experiences, just as seen with CPK. To actually be turned into a monster, you need to be explicitly chosen by XD, who then influences Dream into luring you in. Since XD feeds off of the souls, he needs high quality souls. This usually means souls from good, strong people with admirable qualities that XD can then torture and break and feed off of. That's why certain characters, like Ered's guards, weren't chosen. They were cowardly and ran away instead of staying and coming back with their king, like Sam did. That's also why the monsters reveal themselves to specific individuals and not just any random person, and why some people get caught in trances and brought into the forest and others not. So every person in a story that was chosen and turned had some sort of admirable quality. In chapter 29, I specifically named loyalty, curiosity, free-spirited, bravery, compassion, and resilience. But any positive or admirable quality counts, such as patience, hopefulness, trustworthiness, creativity, and other such things. Things that Dream felt he himself lacked, or things he was never shown when he was alive, and things that XD would want to break and twist. The second part to being turned is that Dream needs to physically touch the characters. He can't physically leave a certain inner circle of the forest because of the nature of his own curse being bonded to his tombstone, so that's why he needs the other creatures to capture and lure the people closer to him. He will always turn them right before they die or just after they've passed out. The way the curse was broken for the other characters is when the source of the power, the book, was destroyed. It couldn't be done with human ways, so human-induced fire wouldn't work. But Sapnap, being a trapped soul and therefore a paranormal being himself, his fire is ideal to destroy the book. Also, as explained in chapter 29, XD's curse and power over someone only has as much power as the cursed one gives it. So when the curse weakened, the trapped souls started rebelling. That gave them the edge needed to be freed. That's why Patches needed to come get Dream to encourage him and make him believe he could be free and deserved a second chance. XD's deal is only as strong as Dream lets it be. So once Patches revealed to him that he absolutely could break free, the chains and curse broke and XD lost his gateway to this area of the physical world. The timeline of what happens to somebody who's been scratched by the monsters goes like this. If you've been wounded and haven't immediately gotten caught in the forest and you've run away, for the first 3 days you just have horrible nightmares. On the third night, you start sleepwalking and being called back into the forest. So the forest calls you back and you're basically sleepwalking back. After 3 months, you start injuring yourself because the monster inside of you that XD wants you to become is scratching to get out, basically, which is what happens with CPK. And that would basically just get worse and worse and worse until you essentially self-mutilate, and you would basically just end up dying from misery, essentially. The further away you go, the less bad it gets and the more you can survive. But yeah, if you stick around too long, it's not going to be fun for anybody involved. I got some questions about the afterlife, and the way I describe it is a utopian Minecraft world. You can do pretty much anything you want, but nobody gets hurt, you can't die, and there are no monsters. You can build, explore, and live a perfectly fun and peaceful life. Or you could be majorly chaotic, whatever you find the most fun. Not like it will affect the others anyway. Hell does very much exist in this AU, but for the characters to go to hell, they would need to completely reject any and all help, being so spiteful and angry and hateful that not even a hand from a close friend could get them to join them. Hateful souls cannot go to the afterlife, so go to hell instead. Another way of souls to end up in hell is if they become corrupted. In chapter 29, Techno told Filza it's not good for them to linger in the physical world too much. That's because souls don't belong in the physical world, they belong in the afterlife. So hanging around too much would eventually corrupt the soul to the point they become vulnerable to demonic spirits. XD is just one of many, and are dragged down to hell if they don't accept help soon enough. And hell just sucks. It's like the limbo the trapped souls are stuck in, but so much worse in every way imaginable. To continue with the theme of threes, a soul starts corrupted after 3 days, and if by 3 years they haven't left the living world yet, they get dragged into hell. Souls that have already moved on to the afterlife can act as guardian angels to their loved ones, which is why Velvet, Floof, and Patches were able to come get Ant and Dream when they needed guidance, and eventually come home. It's also why Phil and Techno came to get Kristen, because she was worried for those still alive, and couldn't quite let go yet. Souls in the afterlife are untouchable and uncorruptible by demonic creatures, which is why XD had no power over Patches, and where Velvet reassured Ant everything would be alright. Souls in the afterlife were all once in the living world, so they can much more directly help and influence the living world, but usually in subtle and invisible ways that the living people don't expect. The souls can't do much more than they're permitted to do so. For example, if Wilbur was struggling with a situation, he could silently ask Kristen for help and guidance, and Kristen would indirectly influence a solution that Wilbur would be able to figure out himself. But if somebody was resistant to help or being influenced, the souls wouldn't be able to do anything. They need permission and an opening to help the living people due to them having free will. Some objects with high emotional significance, like Kristen's necklace she gifted to the survivors, can become a protective item or a more direct way for souls to interact with the living. But it doesn't always work and depends on the gravity of the situation. These are some questions I collected from YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. I might be answering some questions I already answered in this video, but better safe than sorry. Something I've been wondering near the end, when we get a look into Dream's thoughts, he says that he only looks for certain people to join his family. Was that true, or just another lie that XD put into his head? Because it seemed like anyone and everyone was getting taken when they stepped into the forest, but maybe there's some stories we didn't see when some entered and got to leave, or just got killed. The only example I can think of is Eret's guards from when he got captured, but that could be more because his magic was weaker, with only a few souls powering it at the time, and they never got harmed in any way, so that the magic couldn't call out to them, and also no one out of the 8 people there decided to go after them when they fled after Eret got taken by Punt. I already answered this, but it's both. XZ only wants quality souls that he can feed off of, and Dream wants good people or people with desirable traits. That's why some of the monsters showed themselves as specific people, and why some travelers got lured in when others didn't. Why a majority of the locals didn't get lured in because their fear was undesirable to Dream, and it made their souls tasteless to XD. Dream didn't want the guards because he knew they wouldn't come back to search for Eret because he saw weakness in them, unlike Sam, who was loyal, fearless, and fought back. Eret's guards were the only mistake, if you will. They were the first and only time Dream let somebody XD nor him wanted in the forest. Consider it a trial and error moment for Dream. How did you plan out the story? Did you have a rough guideline or where things went and filled in over time? Did planning out the animatics affect the writing in any way? The last question is the only one I'm curious of because the lyrics 6 innocent little souls, which is such a specific number that applies to the original song, but also fits so well with this story, so I'm curious on how intentional it was. I answered majority of this question earlier in the video, but for a part of it, I had the entire story planned and completed before I started the animatics, and a lot of story parts just fell into place naturally. How does the afterlife work in the story? Like, can they interact with the living / observe the living, or was the Patches event a one-time thing? 2, can the demon, I think it was a demon, that cursed Dream and others come back, it was warded off / destroyed forever? I already answered question 1 kind of, but souls in the afterlife know everything about the living world, so they don't need to observe it, they just know everything about it and what's happening. Remember, they're not limited to the restrictions of the physical world anymore, they're beyond that. I already answered the other part of the first question, but no, Patches was not a one-time thing, as seen with Velvet and Floof. For the second one, XD, who, yes, is a demon, has been warded off from these specific souls, and it can never affect them again, but it is not destroyed forever. As explained in chapter 30, it's just lost its connection to this part of the living world. I wanted to start off by saying I absolutely love this series, and you as an animator, you are so talented. Thank you, I appreciate that. What I was wondering about is how much did the cursed souls actually know about XD and his control over Dream? I know souls were connected to each other, so they knew they were being tortured by Dream through the book, but Dream didn't necessarily know he was torturing them. And in many of the dream sequences of Eren, Techno is shown protecting the others from an unseen danger. I thought this was Dream at first, but later you hinted that it may have been XD himself. But in the last few chapters, it didn't seem like any of the souls except Dream knew about XD or had ever heard about him before, and even Dream didn't recognize XD for what he truly was as an evil demon. I think what I'm saying is I would just like some more clarification on what the souls actually knew or understood, if that made sense. It is explained in the story, the cursed souls didn't know of XD until the curse was lifted, and then they knew. They knew there was something out there that was dangerous, but they didn't know exactly, they just knew it wasn't Dream. They knew some of Dream's past and his intentions, but there was a gap in their knowledge. As said by Hannah in chapter 25, we don't know what happened after, referring to what happened to Dream after he died. They know something happened and there's something out there more powerful than Dream, but they don't know who or what. Dream didn't realize XZ had evil intentions because Dream had a weak and vulnerable soul. He was so broken that a demon offering him the illusion to a second chance was seen as a saving grace. XD manipulating Dream into a false sense of freedom, essentially. For the animatics, did you pick the songs first and then base the story around them, or work on the story first? Also, what gave you the most trouble when working on this? Both. Depends on where I was in the story. Probably posting the story in AO3, that was painful. One thing I've been wondering, where does this take place in the world? Apparently there's a castle, so that narrows it down, but I'd like clarification. As I said in the beginning of the video, it does not matter. It is rather Central Europe inspired, but seeing how I purposely avoided naming any countries or giving anybody any region specific accents, consider it a fictional neutral location. 1. So in a hypothetical like second book series, if the group that lives was still to be going after XD, or demons like XD, were the spirit that were possessed and Chris had helped the group. 2. Would you change any designs for the monsters? And 3. When a human body is no longer able to hold onto its host, does the spirit's eyes fade to black, or does black slowly wash over their eyes? 1. I don't work in hypotheticals. I don't know what I would do with the story. 2. No. 3. Normal soul's eyes look like human eyes. However, the trapped soul's eyes start off blank white, then slowly fade to black and become hollow over time as XD drains them. How does XD know which souls to intercept, like Dream, and how does he do it? And along those lines, did he keep Patches from meeting Dream right after his death? It sort of looks like that in the animatic. I already answered the first question, but with the second one, yes, XD very much kept Patches away from Dream. He literally interrupted their meeting. He grabbed Dream away from Patches. And due to the nature of the curse, he blocked the Afterlife souls from interacting with the cursed ones. They weren't able to access the Afterlife, and the Afterlife wasn't able to get to them. But once the curse was lifted and XD had no more power, Patches and the others could access freed souls. Also, yes, Patches, Floof, Velvet, and all the others are normal cats and people. What Patches did wasn't unique to Patches, but she needed to be the one to confront XD because being somebody Dream loved was the only one who could act as a guardian angel to Dream. Why didn't the locals near the woods ever move? They could have prevented deaths, like Rambus and maybe ants. A reply with a question. Why do humans live near dangerous locations, like volcanoes, or places with high levels of natural disasters or human-caused catastrophes? There's many reasons why. For the locals, it's a mix. They have nowhere they could actually go, a lot of them couldn't afford moving, but also they're used to it. That's why Boomer and Tina never left. They love their little town. It's home. Those who wanted and could afford to move away did, but a lot of them stayed because it's just what they were used to. Remember, humans are strange. Oftentimes, human will decide to live with pain and misery instead of confronting it, because confronting it is scary and disturbs the routine, which is described in chapter 25. And if anything, I guess, the locals felt responsible for keeping people away and doing what they could to warn people. For every reckless explorer, there were plenty more that were warded off by the warnings of the locals. It's why they made that path that goes around the forest, so that outsiders wouldn't accidentally stray into it. So it's a mix of things. What I like to know is that it's implied that the spirits can communicate with each other, but Dream is far removed from them, so they cannot communicate with him. Does he hide himself away in his grave most of the time? The spirits can't communicate with each other, they just knew of each other and exist. The only time they've been able to really talk was when they spoke to Aaron. Dream doesn't separate himself from the others knowingly, that's XD blocking him from the others. My question is related to the ghouls. If you wanted to change Alyssa, Vixar, and Lazybeard's monster's cursed form, what would you have in mind? And did Velvet have one too? I don't want to change any of them. And Velvet doesn't have one because he'd never get turned. He's not part of the story in the same way as the others, so it's not relevant. If the rest of the characters didn't just fade away as spirits and actually got their physical bodies back, like Tommy, Boom, etc., how would they adjust to modern society? How would the public and news outlet have reacted? I think it would have just ended in absolute catastrophe. I say that because the souls from centuries past don't belong in the present world. Their time long past. They're not meant to be there. At best, their bodies would turn to dust and they'd just die anyway. At worst, you get human experimentations and outcast by society for not being of this time. And also, I just never would write the entire of the forest all surviving because that would be a pain to write and extremely tedious to read. I can't find the original question, but somebody asked, how can everybody understand each other because English changed over time? And my answer to that is, so you can accept the idea of a paranormal demon cursing an entire forest and trapping souls, but not people from different countries understanding each other. For the real answer, it's because they're not restricted to the limitations of the physical world and they just know things. This is a question from Twitter. Who's related to you in your AU? Genuinely curious as I've been confused by some stuff a lot. Unless specified otherwise, they're unrelated. So yeah, nobody's related to anybody. Unless I've stated otherwise. The next set of questions are from Instagram. What was the disease? Variant of the pneumonic plague. Most of the questions can be answered by reading the story. Go read the story. How long has Mumsa been waiting to be reunited with her family? 80 years! Go read my story. Go, go, go. Do you think the ghosts felt any similar side effects to people who were still alive? They have the luxury of being dead and beyond human things such as trauma. Imagine me doing jazz hands. Were the souls sort of like backseat passengers, able to watch but not act? Yep. A lot of guilt in this story. If you got cursed, which animal would you rather merge with? I would not be chosen because I am not a Dream SMP member, but if I was to become a monster, I would be the Beast of Gévaudan. Who is Rambo before he died? A child! Read my story. I saw that some of them had their cause of death affect their monster forms. Why was that only for some? None of them died until the curse was lifted, and no real reason. I created their stories after I had already designed them. Just convenience for me, lol. Good luck on making a part 2 of more members join Dream SMP, rip your poor hand. There is content to be made, my hand will just have to cope. Did you ever have any ideas of other characters that showed up? Corpse, a Mexican Dream, Girl Dream. Guests were never considered, no. Only ever wanted to include actual Dream SMP members and close relatives, not the various characters they played, XE being the only exception because I needed a big bad. What did you enjoy the most about the AU, as in creating it, or what characters or story you enjoyed the most? Finishing it. But the real answer is seeing the story characters come together. If more members were added, will you make a design for them? If there are any new members added and I get the motivation, inspiration, I will attempt a part 2. If so, will it be just for fun or will they be included in the story? Guess we'll have to see, won't we? Okay, it's a really good question, but how much time do you spend while doing this amazing piece of art? I came up with the idea over the span of a year, but started and finished it in about 3 months. How do you come up with the idea? Daydreaming and time. What does everyone do when there isn't someone to turn into a monster? Nothing, they're just dormant. Unless their monster nature is to wander, then those like Sam go on a patrol, but it's on autopilot, so he's basically dormant. Do they just stand and wait? Do they pretend they have lives in the towns? They stand and wait. When Dream is inactive, so are they. Do the new monsters teach the old ones about the monster high dance, how to do it? Lol, no. That would be finding confident companionship, and XD can't have that. He feeds off their negativity and misery. These have been bugging me for so long, I need answers. Do they use the empty houses as their own? Nah, not necessarily. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They're paranormal, they don't need to live. List your top 3 favorite from the AU. Sam, Wilbur, CPK. Does Anne Frost inside of the monster form miss his beloved boyfriend? No. Not at all. No, he does not, no. Read the story. Would you ever want to be in like a cameo interacting in the story or part of the story? No. Will there be future videos on them? Gasp, or backstories for before they became cursed? No. That's really boring and I already did that. Why do you care about the most boring aspects of a story? What was your favorite design? Sam's. Hardest character design, easiest character design. Majority of them were easy. George was his trickiest though. What was your favorite moment of the story? Fight scene. Yeah, honestly, a majority of these questions can just just be summed up as, go read the story or listen to the audiobook. You have no excuse to not know. So what comes next? Will there be a sequel? Maybe, I don't know. It depends on whether we get any new Dream SMP members or if I get any inspiration to continue the story. That's why I left the story open-ended. For now, the characters are concentrating on their current projects and on recovering. If they ever do find info on XD, they'll pursue it, but if they never do, they won't. A lot of people ask me if I would explore or do stories about other SMPs. No, I will not. The reason being I don't watch other SMPs, and also because I don't enjoy crossovers and wanted to keep this a Dream SMP AU only. I don't want to write something I don't personally enjoy just for the sake of pandering to my audience. I think that would feel forced and nobody would have fun. So for now, this is it. Maybe I'll explore it in the future, maybe not. For now, this is the end. What am I okay with? I've had some questions about fan works I'm okay with. I'm always overjoyed and very grateful to accurate fan works and projects. What I mean by that is fan works that make sense and are relevant to what I have written in my AU. If you wish to draw scenes from my story that I didn't depict, or redraw frames from my animatics and such, go ahead. I'd love to see what you come up with, and all the character designs are in this video, so you're welcome to screenshot and save them for reference. Can others make their own retelling of the story via their own animatics and audiobooks? Honestly, I'd rather you didn't. I made my own animatics and audiobook for a reason, so that everybody can watch and listen to the entire AU in one place and know what's official or not. I don't want to stifle anybody's creativity, but I'd rather you refrain from retelling my story. Are you okay with self-inserts? They're not canonical or applicable to the story, so no, not really. I don't even have a Sono self-insert in this AU. If you want to make a What If I Was a Monster design but it's completely separate from my AU, do what you want. That's none of my business. But the story is written the way it is. There's no room or space for other characters I haven't personally written. Can I cosplay your designs? If you're able to, go ahead. Can I use the designs for other projects or uses? Well, I've come up with the designs, the characters aren't actually mine, so that would depend on what the content creators are okay with. It depends on what you want to use the design for. But generally speaking, if it's anything outside of fan works, I'd say probably no. Can I write my own sequel to the story or write related stories? Please don't. I'd like room to come up with my own follow-ups if I ever get the inspiration to do so. If anything, I would encourage you to come up with your own separate AU original story, then you'd have much more freedom to explore any details or themes you want without being restricted by the rules I have set for the AU. If there are any questions I didn't answer in the animatics, written story, audiobook, Q&A stream, or in this video, please do let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. Remember, if you ask me a question I have already answered, I will only be replying with the brain emoji. Thank you so much for following this story of mine. I never thought a one-off Halloween special would go this far and so out of hand, and it's certainly been an experience. Getting back into writing was certainly something I never expected to do, not like this at least, and it reminded me why I loved writing in the first place. I definitely feel like I have lots of things I can learn and improve from this project, and I will try to make my next project and series even better, whatever it may be. Thank you again for your support and enthusiasm. I wouldn't have done any of this if it wasn't for your curiosity and questions. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.
1, 2, 3, now.
Your Generations caught up. Look how things will switch. People there quick. They don't wanna move at the bits. Boy wanna grow 10 bits.
Be sure to check the door lock.
black cape and harsh, you're the devil's own son. Don't speak my name or my life will be done. Dullahan, Dullahan, I see you and I run.